For anyone considering or just starting out in No Rest for the Wicked, I'm going to keep this review as spoiler-free as possible. I will not be showing any cutscenes, dialogue, boss fights, or unique set-piece environments from anything beyond the first boss, the main town, and also Crucible. With that said, let's get into my review of No Rest for the Wicked together after 100 hours. At the time of recording this, Steam shows I have just over 113 hours played, and I just finished the campaign on my second playthrough. This time though, I set it to the hardest difficulty from the get-go, and I'm running it fully solo. For anyone short on time, here's my TLDW. If you enjoy overcoming challenging combat that rewards proper distance, timing, and learning enemy patterns, this game will be an excellent sparring partner for you. Secondly, if you've ever found yourself going for just one more run in games like Diablo or PoE, No Rest tickles similar dopamine receptors. Lastly, if pushing ever deeper into the unknown in order to discover vast untapped resources in games like Valheim, Enshrouded, or Don't Starve excites you, you'll find a great home here. And if you said yes to at least 2 out of the 3, No Rest for the Wicked together should serve you really well. Maybe set aside a weekend and rope in a buddy. I bet you'll both have a blast. So if you want to hear more in detail about why I strongly recommend No Rest for the Wicked, kick back, enjoy, and let me know if you agree at the end. I'd like to get performance out of the way first. I'm running this on an AMD Ryzen 7900X, and for my GPU I have a 5070 Ti, and I've been playing at 4K with the frame rate limited to 115 FPS. The in-game quality settings were set to quality, and I've been using DLSS that was also set to quality. I have motion blur and dynamic resolution scaling set to off. And overall, my experience has been very solid. In over 100 hours, I've only crashed the desktop a couple of times, and I've encountered maybe 5 or 6 server disconnects that would kick me to character select, but each time I could immediately log right back in, so there were no extended downtimes. My ping from the east coast of the US has consistently been under 40 milliseconds and most of the time in the 20s. Network slowdowns were infrequent or not severe enough that it ruined the experience for me. Something else important to note is that ping only shows when you're in a shared realm, so if you're purely solo, networking will not impact your performance at all, and the whole game can be played fully offline, which in this day and age is a massive win for preservation. FPS, on the other hand, was a bit of a mixed bag. The majority of the time my experience was smooth, but would still encounter some heavy FPS dips and stutters. If you take a look at the metrics of the capture on screen now, you can see the FPS plummet from around 100 FPS down to the low 60s, and that's with my GPU pegged at near 100%, so some tweaking is probably still needed here. I will say I have seen reports of worse performance than mine, but I can only really comment on what my experience was like, and so far it's been fairly consistent and didn't detract from the overall experience, which is really what you want from a game because the focus really should be on the gameplay. So, with performance out of the way, we can really get into the meat and potatoes of this review. So let's start from strength, and it doesn't get much stronger than this game's art design. If I had to describe it in one word, I'd call it dreamy. There were definitely more than a few times throughout my journey that I had to stop and take in the scenery. But I will say, I think the camera does the design team no justice, because it's a forced camera perspective that cannot be controlled at all. It zooms in and out and pans completely based on some algorithm that they have in place and seems to react to the location that you're in and the content that's nearby. At the end of the day, I'm not a huge fan. But when the camera gets it right, you get views like this. The best thing is, most of the time, what you can see is a place you can go. There were so many times I ended up looping back around incidentally and going, oh, this leads back to Sacrament or wherever. That made it so fun to explore, and I loved connecting the dots in my brain for future trips. But back to the art style. It gives me oil pigment vibes and really blends well with the character and area designs. It imbues the world with a painted feeling as if everything was brushed by hand. It's really fantastical, and because there's a day-night cycle with random rain effects, each area adjusts to the different lighting and gives off a completely different vibe. During the day, a field that's bright, airy, and cheerful, perfect place for all the fauna to frolic, feed, and fornicate, but everything changes at night. It feels way more oppressive, almost like the feeling you get when you enter a dungeon for the first time in Elden Ring, like you're never quite sure what's going to be around that next corner. If art style was the potatoes and the meat and potatoes, the gameplay is the prime rib. From 10,000 feet, it looks like most any other action RPG. You explore the world, killing enemies while trying not to suffer the same fate. You pick up loot and materials that you use to upgrade your character, only to find yourself back in the field soon thereafter to loot more corpses. I think you get the idea. But where No Rest for the Wicked really differentiates itself from the pack is the combat. To truly explain the combat, I have to break this section up into melee versus ranged combat, because melee versus ranged is so different, they might as well be two separate games. Melee is like Dark Souls. Melee is like Elden Ring or any other Souls-like, but from an isometric point of view. Your actions, your distance, and your timing all have to be carefully considered. You have limited stamina and every action consumes it pretty quickly. Running, dodging, and attacking all require stamina, so it's critical to pick when you attack, all while ensuring you have enough at the end of your combo to escape. An example attack pattern could be to bait an attack, counterattack, and dodge out. Or, if you're using a one-hander, you can choose to equip a shield that requires an active block to be fully effective. So you could attack, then block, and while blocking, your stamina will still refill. And if an enemy attacks you while you have an active block up, that's where your defense stat of your shield comes into full effect. You will still take damage, but a reduced amount. Shields can also cause an enemy's weapon to bounce off, mini stunning them and opening them up for a counter. Be warned though, that mechanic works against you too, which makes shielded enemies a handful to deal with. On top of that, there's also a parry mechanic which isn't required to beat the game, but it can help a lot, especially in mini or major boss fights, because you'll probably end up running them over and over until you get their patterns down. Hitting multiple parries in between counters is just pure bliss when done right. That sound is like Pavlov's bell for me, it's so good. At the very start, everybody will be melee, because you wash ashore with literally just the clothes on your back, so your fists are your only weapons until you can pick something else up. This is arguably one of the hardest parts of the game, especially if it's your first run. You could go 3 minutes before finding a weapon, or you could go 30. On my second go around, it took me 12 minutes to find a weapon, and that's knowing enemies' range, timing, and tells, and also knowing the map layout and hidden chest locations. If you get caught up here, I wouldn't fret. I can't even count how many times I died early on in my first run. Thankfully, death isn't gravely punishing. You don't lose EXP, you don't lose gold, you don't lose max HP, you just lose some equipment durability, and equipment, even when fully broken, can be repaired either by a rune spell or at the town's blacksmith. For range combat, just forget most everything I just said. Playstyle is to unload your quiver from afar while keeping your distance. You have unlimited ammo and your only real restriction is stamina. Enemies do have ranged attacks, but they're mostly inconsequential when you're in an open area. One of the biggest benefits of ranged is being able to shoot enemies that are on a cliff or being able to shoot enemies from a cliff, something melee just can't do unless they have a ranged attack rune equipped or have a bow or wand in their secondary weapon slot. You can't talk about combat without talking about weapons and gear, and No Rest for the Wicked is decently fleshed out here too. Items are categorized as common, which are gray, magic, which are blue, plagued, which are purple, and uniques, which are yellow. And if you've played any type of ARPG, you'll probably understand what those mean, all except for plagued items. Those work slightly differently. So common items do not have any enchantments. Blue items can have up to 3 enchantments, and purple items can have up to 5 enchantments, but one of those enchantments will be a negative one, so you get 4 positive and 1 negative on a purple item. Also, enchantments on blue and purple items can be modified with the proper ember, i.e. a crafting material. You can swap enchantments to something entirely different or just raise the stat roll. However, uniques always have the same enchantment, so if you find 5 of the same unique bow, they'll all have the exact same lines but can vary in the stat rolls. It's good to note though that enchantments for uniques cannot be swapped, but the rolls can be improved using an ember. That's all pretty standard. Where I think No Rest for the Wicked took it a good step further is that each style of weapon, even within the same category, for instance spears, swords, or maces, will function slightly differently. As an example, I want to show you the differences in the spears because each one has its own unique attack pattern. I really like that the devs spent the extra time on this mechanic because it encourages experimentation and makes finding just another spear actually kind of exciting. Another way you can customize your weapon is through runes. Runes are skills that can be added to a weapon and are typically attack skills, whereas you can also add runes to your character, but those are generally utility skills such as heals, teleports, or repairs. But for now, I want to focus on the weapon runes. Every weapon has 4 rune slots for you to customize. Some runes are reserved for certain weapon classes, so some are specific to wands or one-handers or bows. And this is where the true power creep sets in, because rune skills can make a massive impact and will change how you approach future fights. The main downside is they can't be spammed. Well, most of the time they can't be spammed until fairly late game, because every rune skill requires focus, which acts like mana to use, and that's indicated by the orange bar underneath the EXP bar up in the top left corner there. Once you get to around level 8, I'd start investing into some focus to bring it up to 150 once your HP, stamina, and damage are all in a decent place. You can purchase new runes through merchants that have rotating inventory every 24 hours, but I've found the best way to discover new runes is actually through all the gear you pick up. Each weapon dropped will spawn with a random appropriate rune skill that can be extracted. So even if you find a basic common wand, it could have the exact rune you were looking for, so even common gear can be extremely valuable. So don't be so quick to sell without taking a peek at the rune first. Since I wanted to evaluate melee combat and range combat separately, I'll give each one a grade. For melee combat, it's an easy A+. Range combat though, it's like a B-, I think. And that brings us nicely into the leveling system. If you've ever played a Souls game, you'll find this very familiar. Every level up, you earn 3 attribute points, which you can spend on health, stamina, strength, dex, int, faith, focus, and equip load. I'm not going to go much into detail on this because this is fairly generic and pretty self-explanatory. One thing I will add though is, even though weapons have strength, dex, int, and or faith requirements, they can still be used even if you don't meet those requirements yet. But they will be at a reduced damage output. I think that's a nice quality of life feature because it allows you to test out a weapon before investing points into it. Also, you can respec your character in the Crucible. The next major progression system is town building. When we arrive at Sacrament, the town is kind of in shambles. Things are broken and run down, and it's our job to gather resources to help them rebuild. This is done through an NPC named Danos, who's located near the center of town here. This can be a bit of a slog in my opinion. There are 12 projects to take on and most have multiple levels, so you're probably looking at close to 30 upgrades that need doing if you want to complete the town, though not all of them are critical to progression. I could see this turning some people off. I think they could have the amount of materials needed for each upgrade and it would really smooth out the progression because not everyone wants to farm endlessly. Though personally, I didn't mind it. I somewhat enjoy finding new farming routes. Along with town building, there's home building. This is where you set up a base to fill it with your crafting, production, refining stations, and of course, a place to store all of your loot. You can eventually place a teleport pad inside as well so you don't have to TP into town and walk to your house. This part can also be pretty resource intensive, but if you want most everything you'll need in one place, you'll need to cough up the mats to build everything out. Although if you don't want to spend the resources, at least initially, to build up your crafting benches and refineries, you can use the ones that are available at the woodworker, the blacksmith, and also the tailor. Another option that can help alleviate the grind of material farming is co-op. That's the shiny new feature of no rest for the wicked together. If you grab a friend, that cuts the amount you'll both need to farm in half because you can choose to allow any or all of the players in the realm to share the house you bought. You can have up to 4 people in a realm, and each realm stays active even when the creator of the realm is not playing. I don't know what kind of black magic Moon Studios casted to make this happen, but they've done it, and well. To me, that's kind of amazing. Also, you can individually share your chests or keep some of them private so only you can access its contents. However, there is one thing you cannot choose to not share, and that's world progression. If one person completes a quest, it will be complete for all members on the realm. That means if they kill a boss, you won't be able to refight it, at least until the very end game. A workaround Moon Studios added this patch so at least people could still follow the story was that they added the compendium, which is part tutorial and also part repository for where you can rewatch any cutscene completed thus far on the realm, even if you didn't complete it yourself directly. Overall, I didn't mind the shared realm, but I can see how this would trip others up. The way my friend and I did it was anybody could complete all the smaller quests that led up to the boss, But when we finally got there, we waited until the other was back online to fight the boss together, because those fights, they're the creme de la creme. Just be mindful when attacking though, because friendly fire is always on and there's no way to turn it off that I know of. The damage you do to your teammates is pretty small, but it's the micro stuns and staggers that can easily ruin someone's run. The bosses are tough, but fair, and the lore for them are actually pretty epic. On my defeat, of which there were many, it was usually pretty rare for me to feel that my loss was the result of something cheap the boss did. It was usually more because I overcommitted, or I missed a dodge, or I missed a parry and the boss took advantage of my mistake. Another interesting note is bosses will actually adjust to how many players are in the party, not just by how much damage they do and life they have, but also their movesets will change. And all of this combines into an experience I continuously looked forward to. And on the topic of getting to the bosses, that means interacting with the map design a lot. And I can honestly say it's been a real treat. The world map as is in early access isn't huge, but it's massively dense. Its verticality, overlapping paths, and traversal puzzles are such a huge boon for those who love to explore. There isn't a corner of this map that doesn't have something of interest, whether it be a chest, an enemy, a shortcut, or even just a beautiful view. It's extremely rewarding and super enjoyable. I will say it was tricky at times to find the proper path forward and sometimes frustrating, but the payoff was always worth it. Speaking of payoff, I typically don't think the payoff for story is all that worthwhile in most ARPGs. It's usually good versus evil or heaven versus hell, and it's been done to death. Please don't flame me, but I'm a cutscene skipper. I have over 650 hours into PoE 2, and I could not tell you in any real detail what the story is about, and I'm not even exaggerating. And for the first 8 to 10 hours, the same could be said for No Rest for the Wicked. That was until I started hearing bits and pieces of the voice acting, especially from the mainline characters. The voice acting combined with the facial animations turned out to be top notch. It got me interested enough that I went back into the compendium to rewatch all of the cutscenes, and I'm so glad I did. The story is sharp, engaging, and the acting felt just so genuine. I really was not expecting to be drawn in as much as I have, and now having finished the early access, I can't wait to see how the rest of the story plays out. And finally, to close out the review portion of the video, it's time to talk about the endgame and replayability. As it stands right now, the endgame is made up of the Crucible, which is your typical tower level style roguelite that's available early on after you reach the town, but it will punish those who aren't equipped well enough. Crucible also scales with your level, so you can't sit on your laurels and still expect to keep pace. As mentioned earlier, this is also where you can respec your character, but I'll leave the how for you to find out. Next are plagued areas, which are similar to Hell Tides in Diablo 4, where certain parts of the map are overrun with more difficult and varied enemies. This is also how you farm the endgame materials to upgrade your gear to the current max level of 16. Plagued areas can be scaled from level 1 through 4, which is determined by the quantity of offerings you choose to burn at any fire within that area. The more you burn, the harder the enemies get, the more curses will be applied to your character, and the larger the reward you receive from killing that area's boss. This is also how you end up refighting the mainline bosses. Lastly though, not specific to endgame, you can do your daily and weekly bounties and challenges for set loot. I'd say this is worth an additional 10 to 15 hours of content over and above the early access campaign. And since this is still early access, I want to give some small but constructive feedback on what I'd like to see change from the current build on top of what I've already mentioned. First is, what the heck is up with the chest sizes? A small chest holds 20 items and looks like this. A medium chest holds 30 items and looks like this. And a large chest holds 40 items and looks like this. This makes no sense. The large chest is 10 times the size of a small, and it holds twice the amount. It's just way too big. I'd ask the devs to please consider making the current medium the future large and add a medium in between the current small and medium chests. Homesteads are pretty small as they are, and hoarding is one of my favorite pastimes, and I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. Secondly, is making tree chopping and ore mining actually store those items in the character's stash. You already have a good mechanic with the perfect hits, you shouldn't need another 2 actions to pick up each individual piece. It truly is just more of a nuisance and just doesn't feel like it adds anything to the experience. And I did some back of the napkin math, and just between ore and wood, You'll need to do this over 500 times to complete the town. Also on resource gathering, I'd like to see a way to cancel out of fishing with a dodge. As it stands right now, when I cast my line out, I'm stuck in that animation until I either get stunned out of it by an enemy or if a fish bites. And lastly, I think there needs to be a rebalance between weapons. Bows right now trivialize the game, and I feel two-handers are at a disadvantage due to their slow attack speed, high stamina cost, and the ability of so many enemies to just poise right through our attacks. I know many other games also struggle with this, and I can't really offer a direct fix, but I do want to point it out. So that's it. Overall, I give No Rest for the Wicked together a very strong A, or a 95 out of 100, in its current state with the understanding it's still in early access. Honestly, I have really high hopes for the future of this game, and also faith in Moon Studios, who also created the Ori series, of which the first is sitting at 96% overwhelmingly positive from over 30,000 reviews on Steam right now. Not to mention, this last update was released 10 days ago, and they've already released 7 hotfixes, one of which fixed an issue I was going to comment on in the section about the plagued areas resetting only once every 24 hours. These guys are really on it, and it shows. To end this review off, I wanted to say it was because of just how much I enjoyed playing No Rest for the Wicked that I even bothered to do it at all. It's like when you watch a great movie and you just want to tell everybody you know about it. That's me in a nutshell here. So if you enjoyed this deep dive review and feel I deserved it, kindly like this video and subscribe for more. It would really mean the world to me. Also, can you help me decide what to do next? I'm debating between a long form review of Neo 3, which is set to launch in 2 days, or if you'd rather a tips and tricks video after 100 hours that would go over my favorite farming routes, crafting methods, and a few other tips I've discovered. I think it could benefit new players possibly, or maybe even those that are struggling some. I'm really looking forward to seeing your thoughts. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video.